Okay, Shukri, well, you had me on your podcast, and I enjoy following you and all your progress. So I thought, hey, a better guest on my podcast could not be anyone else but you. So thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. When I did the podcast with you sometime last spring, and I'm even struggling to remember when exactly it was. Why is it bothering me? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I just I just thought to myself, you said, what better way to use this opportunity? I mean, we're all locked down at that time to, reach out, do a podcast, interview different guests across the sports media industry. And it's always very humbling when someone asks me to come on their podcast, as that's happened
Yeah.
on numerous occasions and so forth. And thank you for having me on. I can't wait. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I've seen, I think, a birth of something really nice that's been happening during the pandemic, because now with the technology, I've been saying, why haven't I used Zoom before this? First of all,
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean? Well, I don't know why I didn't think of doing interviews, especially for my baseball background and for doing talk shows like yourself. But so
Yeah.
many of us are doing this now. But what I have found is so many of us are now connecting. I've made so many friends during this pandemic, friends in the business, and it's nice that we're all doing each other's podcasts because we all need that support.
Absolutely. And one of the great blessings from this pandemic, and this is going to sound a little bit crazy, but talk about taking a positive from a horrific negative. One of the few negatives, positives rather, excuse me, that I take from this is that it's this pandemic has shown me and taught me the importance of getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
I feel like between pre-pandemic and now, over the course of what's been now a year now, I have grown so much as a person, as a broadcaster, as a radio host, and so forth, that it's enabled me to have the confidence to be able to, stand on my own 2 feet and be comfortable in my own skin. I think that in itself is what's really important in you being a play-by-play broadcaster. You understand the importance of being comfortable in your own skin. And me as a national radio host and broadcaster, it's important in recognizing who you are, knowing what you are, and sticking to your true colors.
Yeah, perfectly said. I mean, the true test of someone is adversity. I say this a lot. How are we going to
Mhm.
handle it? A lot of us could have gone, and it's hard. It's easy to go south and be negative, but I think that there's, like you said, and I'm glad to see you grow. So the Shukri Wrights podcast is, use Anchor like I do, which I love, and I
Yeah,
promote it, and I run that same spot you do at the beginning, and then
absolutely.
it goes to all the platforms. You're on a 91.5 FM, 100.1 in Boston. Know your rights. I mean, you talk about a home run title for your show, huh? I like that. It's like
Thank you.
behind the mic, know your rights. I like that.
I sincerely appreciate that. Thank you. You know what's funny? When I was thinking about the title for my second radio show, before I even get to that, there's a little bit of a story that goes behind that, because the show started back in September, and it's crazy to think that it's only been 5 months, but it feels like it has been a lot longer. And I was at a point where I said, I really miss doing live radio shows. I don't know what's available right now, and I'm still working on, building my platform, building my career as I advance and move along. And I say, what college radio station is doing or allowing community members to join and so forth? So I said, let me look into 100.1 FM WBRS. And I looked into it and I reached out, and thankfully the executive board of that station was more than gracious enough for me to have my own radio show. And they said, no, this is live. You're going to be doing this via the Zoom broadcast that the station allows and so forth. And I couldn't have been more thrilled. I was like, you know what, this is phenomenal, because live allows me to, you know not have the safety net of, you can pause and then go back and edit and then continue, but rather being being super aware of what you're saying, how you're delivering it in that particular moment. So when I was thinking about a title for the show, I was saying, I wanted to be something that is both unique and authentic.
Yeah.
And I said, my last name is Wrights, and we were still just coming off of the big social movement in the country in which that you talk about Black Lives Matter and so forth.
Yep.
And I said, why not know your rights, but know your WRIGS? And
Yeah.
that's how the title came about.
It's terrific. Really is. I love it. I think
Thank you.
because your last name, it can have a few different meanings. Like you said, that's really, really cool. So I agree with you about being live. I feel like this is live, even though it's not, but I don't know
Yeah.
what it is when you do something live. There's a, I just, it's hard to record. It's like practicing for sports. I probably was, not great a practice player, but
Mm.
live is awesome. Because there's adrenaline with it.
Oh yeah. And like there's adrenaline that goes with it, and then there's also that factor of whatever you say, you can, but you can't run back to erase it. You know what
No.
I'm saying? So like with play-by-play broadcasting, you could better speak on it than I could. With play-by-play broadcasting, when you're doing it live, you're basically narrating what's happening as it's happening in real time action.
Yeah.
And when you're doing a sports talk radio show or any radio show, regardless of what format it is, live, it's okay. This is what's happening. This is what I'm going to do. But in sports, because this is what we both are experts in. In sports, it's like, okay, you are talking about a particular subject matter, and when it's live, you have the ability to drive the ship, if you will.
Yeah.
And like one of the positives about doing live radio or even live recording or broadcasts and so forth is that it gives you the ability to, at least for me, it allows me to really just hyper focus in on what's being talked about, what's being asked of me, and so forth, whether it be a caller or a guest that I'm interviewing, or in this case, you are the host, I am the guest, and it allows me to just really focus on what is being said, how am I delivering it, and as well as for those that are going to be watching and listening to this podcast later on.
Yeah, the sports talk landscape though it's changed a bit where it's becoming the hot take machine, hasn't it? I know you
Oh
have a good
God.
style the way you do it and you do it right, but I worry about younger people getting in thinking that they need to do that because there are big hosts in our business that are doing well, but I don't know if that
Mhm.
formula is easily duplicated. You can be, Mike Reese does it right and he's got almost 400,000 followers on Twitter. You
Yeah.
don't have to be Mr. Negative and controversial to get listeners, But I get it. I get why people
Yeah.
do it. I don't love it
Like
though.
one of the things about like sports radio, and I've learned this in my own journey, is that, listen, it's easy to be Mr. Negative.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. In our region, because we're both in Greater Boston, in here in New England, we know of 98.5 The Sports Up. We're just using it as an example. We know of certain hosts whose shtick is to piss you off and
Yeah.
to call in and so forth. Most notably, last week, and I did a segment on this on my radio show in which that Tony Maserati called David Pastrnak, the right winger for the Boston Bruins, overrated, and I damn near choked on my food when I heard this,
Yeah.
and I'm like, you talk about riling up the Bruins fan base, but also like, are you serious?
I saw
Like
your tweet.
Pastrnak is actually, yeah, Pastrnak is one of the best young wingers in the league. Or you are like, come on, like at risk of cursing, which I'm not going to do, I said, you know what? Now this is precisely why I chose for me that my style wasn't going to be negative. Am I going to be passionate? You bet your rear end that I am.
Yeah.
Am I going to speak what's on my mind? Absolutely. But am I also going to be authentic and real? Yes. Because to your point, the younger generation that's going to be coming in like behind us, they feel that, well, we have to try to be the Colin Cowherds of the world, or we have to try to be the Mike Felgers of the world, and or the Christopher Mad Dog Russos of the world. No, one of the best advice that I've ever gotten in my career so far is be yourself.
Yes.
And I had an opportunity to interview and speak with Bob McElligott. He's the radio play-by-play voice of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and he gave me this advice. Like, he said, dude, be yourself.
Yeah.
Don't try to be anyone else. Like, your voice is authentic already as is. Who you are and your authenticity speaks volumes as to who you are, how you represent yourself. If you're trying to emulate what some Joe Stick may be trying to do on radio, you're going to fall flat on your face. Just because it may work for everyone else doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, one of the beautiful things about radio is finding your niche, finding out what works for you, finding out who and what you are, how do you present yourself, and sticking with it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about trying to fit in. And I think it comes back down to this important factor here, and that is when you are comfortable in your own skin, you're not worried about the critics, because you're gonna have critics. Period. That's a fact in this business. You're gonna have critics, but when you know how to be comfortable in your own skin and what's your style and what's your approach, none of that matters, and
No,
you end up walking away being more successful than you realize.
I agree with you. And you probably don't know, Bob and I are best friends.
Wow, really?
Bob gave me my first job in baseball in 1997.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh my
Yeah, and I just
God.
talked to him 2 days ago. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. How is he doing?
He's great. I saw that you had him, that you talked to him, and I was going to bring
Yeah,
that up. Yeah, we've been close since, yeah, and he gave me my first shot. Yeah.
that's
He's a
amazing. Wow,
terrific
small world.
person to get advice from.
Yeah,
He's my mentor.
absolutely.
So, yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Like, I can't help but to smile because in speaking with him, and now that I'm talking about it, I'm probably going to go back and listen to that interview just because, like, I got a real sense of authenticity. I'm well aware of his story, working his way up from like doing calling minor league hockey games
Yeah.
to now doing like NHL games for the Columbus Blue Jackets and so forth. And the thing that stood out to me when speaking to him was just how real he was.
Oh, yeah.
That
He's real.
he wasn't one of those guys that, I'm a play-by-play broadcaster of an NHL team. I'm just going to have this aura of a ego and pump my nose high into the air. It wasn't any of that. It
No.
really was just like, hey, we're having a conversation, like we're talking hockey. We both love hockey, and I'll ask him questions about the team. I was asking him about in that interview. I was asking him about Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's been since traded to Winnipeg in a Patrick Laine deal. So it's that authenticity that I really strive for, in which that, and I want to make mention of this important key here. You don't know who's listening or watching. You
Yeah.
don't know who you're impacting, and some kid is watching you or watching I saying that I want to do what he does one day. And you know what? What I noticed that he does something different, but in a good way, apart from what everyone else is doing. And I admire that because in today's world with social media, with Twitter, with YouTube, Facebook, all that fun stuff, it's so easy to say and fall into the trap of, damn, I gotta be like him. I want to be like him. It's like, no, you don't have to.
No.
Learn to create your own style and be comfortable within your own skin and excelling in that.
Yeah. It's called on-air talent. If we all tried to strive to be one, there would be too many duplicates. That's how you have to think of it too. If you're going
Yeah.
to try to be that next guy, and you brought some of those guys up. I mean, Chris Mad Dog Russo, you know, he has that accent. He doesn't sound like a traditional broadcaster, but he's got
Mhm.
something that makes him stand out. To your point, and I agree with
Yeah.
you. National, how'd you get the Pacifica Radio Network? That's a cool thing that you're on.
Thank you. First and foremost, I'm grateful to the Almighty for that. Number one, whew, wow. Um, One day I was just doing some thinking. I said, I want to get more experience and I want to really expand and really put my on air work on a national platform, but I wasn't sure how. Um, One of my good friends by the name of Jake Asman, you may have heard of him. He he does absolutely phenomenal work on for Sports Map Radio Network in Houston. Had him on the podcast late last year, sometime back in the spring summer. I remember reading somewhere about the power of syndication, and I was like, huh. I wonder how do you become a national syndicated radio host, because there's not a whole lot of them out there,
Yeah.
regardless whether it's at Pacifica or even on a national radio network like ESPN Radio, CBS Sports Radio, or Fox Sports Radio, and so forth. So I decided to look into Pacifica Radio Network. One, it wasn't the first time I've heard about Pacifica Radio Network. Pacifica Radio Network has been around, I mean, probably as long as I've been alive. And number one, in New York, they have New York is the media capital of the world. They have their affiliate WBAI, which I grew up listening to.
Yeah.
And so I was already very aware about Pacifica. So I said, I'm going to reach out. I'm going to go and try to reach out to who I need to reach out to, and see where it goes. So I made the connection, and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm interested in becoming a national radio broadcaster. Like, here's my on air work that I've done locally here in Boston and so forth. I would like to have this opportunity." And it wasn't handed to me. I was scrutinized. Honestly, I was scrutinized. I had to explain that, given that this isn't a commercialized radio network, how are you going to do your shows? How are you going to format your shows? Given that,
Yeah.
what is your show going to be about? I was put through the ringer, and ultimately, she ended up liking what I presented, and through my on air work, and she blessed me with the opportunity to have this on the national platform that I have now, and I'm very fortunate and blessed.
That's great. And you could just go to Pacifica Radio Network you could just Google it, right? I found it by
Yeah.
Googling it. Yep.
Yeah,
Easy.
and also, and I will put this out there, that I also put all radio broadcasts and recordings of the show on the Shukri Wrights podcast, which is on iHeartRadio and
Yep.
wherever you get your podcasts as well. So that's another way that you'll be able to listen to it as well.
Yeah. In the body, we're going to have your links. That's so we can point everyone to where you're at.
Yeah.
So I'm so intrigued by a New Yorker that's in Boston. I think that's great. I always had an idea for a reality show that for a summer, the Red Sox and Yankees switch fan, like a fan had to be a Yankee fan, but nobody, they went to every game and just see what would happen after that summer. Would you have respect or would you still have the hate? I think you would have respect if you switched, because I don't hate the Yankees from working in
Yeah.
baseball, because I get to see a lot of things from ground zero and they're incredible. I mean, their organization's incredible. So, how did you get here? That's what we want to know.
How did I get here to Boston?
Not literally. I know you probably did you take a train or you drove here? Yeah. That would have been a great answer.
Well, I did, but how did I get to Boston? I think it's a story that I think people could really appreciate or grow to appreciate with time. And I'm glad that you asked,
Yeah.
because I want to tell the story in its entirety. So it started in May of 2014, um, and I remember this clear as day. Like, now, I was dating someone at the time, and it didn't work out, but they had claimed and said that they had ovarian cancer, and it was gut wrenching to hear. Like, I mean, especially if someone that you're with has
Yeah.
cancer, you want to try to be as supportive as possible. So I made a point and a promise that I was going to come up to Boston and see her in the hospital after post surgery. My younger sister, she had just graduated college that same day as surgery, so I couldn't be there like in the immediate aftermath. So I made a promise I was going to go up there the following Monday, and I did. And the first time I was in Boston, I'll never forget it. I was just mesmerized walking around South Station. And it sounds crazy because living here long enough, it's like, wait, South Station, I don't see anything special about it. But given that it was the first time in Boston for me ever, it was like, oh wow, this is different.
Yeah.
And I remember walking through South Station on the platform where the commuter rail is.
Yep.
And I remember walking through this terminal down into the red line and making my way over to Fenway. And I remember thinking, this is different. Like this is so cool. And seeing Fenway for the first time. And I ended up going up there for only just that day. But I remember saying to myself, I'm going to come back. I don't know when or how, but I'm going to come back. So I ended up returning in January for an overnight stay. I came, ironically enough, it was the same day as the Patriots and Ravens AFC divisional game 2014. It was a Saturday, and I'll never forget this. I was walking through, not it was on the north end, but it was right by Haymarket. I was walking past like the whole legion of like sports bars and pubs. They all got the Pats game on. And I remember this place is a crowded. And that weekend it was brutally cold. I'll never forget walking in just the ice. And there was, by the way, it was the same winter that this region got slammed with consecutive
Oh yeah.
blizzards like that.
Yeah.
It was the winter of 14, 15.
Yep. It's like every 2 weeks we're getting like a foot of
Oh
snow.
yeah, I remember it quite well because
Yeah.
I was a visitor at the time, and I remember like I was like, "Yo, this is cold!" Like, goodness grief. So it was through that experience that made me look at Boston extremely differently. Now, being from New York, you're taught to hate Boston, hate all things Boston. But I'll be the first to admit that something began to change,
Yeah.
and I was like, "There's something different about the city that's unlike any other major city that I've ever been to." But I couldn't help but I started to really like it. But now I left and I came back in March of 2015, and I went to my first ever Boston sporting event that day. It was March 12th, 2015. I went to a Bruins game at the Garden. It was against the Tampa Bay Lightning, the eventual Eastern Conference champions. And I remember I was just in awe. Like this place was sold out, packed. I mean, Bruin fans are absolutely incredible in this city, in this region. And going to my first Bruins game that night was something I'll never forget. And I ended up coming back to Boston throughout the summer of 2015. But then August 2015, I really um it really hit me that I fell in love with Boston, and I actually started shedding a tear um when I was leaving because I was like, damn, do I have to leave? And then my
Yeah.
best friend was like, why don't you just move there? I was like, you know what? I'm going to do exactly just that. So I started working on the process, and the process took me a year and a half, and it was not easy at all. Because one, I didn't know anybody that lived in Boston at the time just yet. But that changed in April of 2016 when I met one of my dearest friends from high school, who was practically family to me at this point. His brother and his girlfriend, who is now his wife, um, they invited me out to dinner in Watertown. And we went out to dinner, and he was giving me advice. He was like, listen, here's my advice for you. When you do move here, live in an area that you're going to be able to like afford, and like don't try to live beyond what you can afford. And just listening to all of his advice, I really took it to heart. And from there, I said, I want to move here in the summer. It didn't work. It didn't work out. I was pissed. I mean, I was
Mhm.
pissed. I was just like, damn. And I came back to visit, I believe it was July. Yeah, it was July of 16. And I was just like, I should be living here. But August 16th came around. Now something happened. It was one afternoon. I had a notebook, and I would tell this to anybody as a life lesson and advice. If you ever have goals, write them down.
Yeah. Good idea.
And I'm serious because it works, but you have to put in the work.
Yeah.
But something told me, go get a notebook, write down what you want for yourself over the course of the next 6 months. I did exactly that. Went in the room, opened the book, wrote down, I want to move to Boston. When? I want to move here in January. Plan B. If that doesn't work, I want to move here in February. If that doesn't work, what's your plan C? Spring. If plan D. If it wasn't going to work, when? Summer. But I wrote it down, and I started working on that plan. Now, this is the craziest part of my journey to Boston. September 2016 rolls around. And at that point, schools had just opened up again. Now, I'm living in Philadelphia. I'm no longer living in New York. I left New York for good in August 16.
Yep.
And now my job is still in New York, but I'm commuting from Philadelphia to New York so to go to work. So now I'm waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to work. So
Oh,
I'm waking up that early to hop on the train, to hop on the SEPTA, to take it to New Jersey Transit, transfer in Trenton, take New Jersey Transit train to New York. And through the course of time, I kind of learned to tweak my commute a little bit, but nonetheless, I was waking up as early as 3 o'clock in the morning to go to work Monday through Friday. I'll get home around average about 7:30 at night, 7:45. Wake up 3 a.m. the next morning, do it all over again. So my mom gives me an advice. Why don't you just get a second job? Like to help you like build up that money. I'm like, you're right. So I got a second job, working weekends, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
wow.
Working as a valet at a hospital. Yes. So now, mind you, I'm working Monday through Friday, commuting from Philadelphia to New York, New York to Philly back. And now Saturdays, I'm working weekends from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Sundays. So now I have no social life,
No.
literally zero, because I was so fixated and focused on making the move to Boston because I knew that making the move to Boston would absolutely give me the best chance to really launch my radio career that I've so dreamed of doing, but I just didn't know how, I didn't know what to do. So by this point, November, I am tired, like physically tired, emotionally tired. As you can imagine, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30. By that point, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm tired. I get home one night. My best friend is like, "Remember why you're doing this, Shu? No one told you had to do this,
Yep.
but you want something bad enough. You're working towards it. Don't give up now because you're already in the process." And it was all I needed to hear. So I kept working. And I applied for a job with WGBH at that time. This was November 2016. Sorry. I got a call for an interview early December. And I said, listen, I'm in New York right now. I'm working, but can I plan this for right after Christmas, the week of Christmas? Like that, because that year, I remember Christmas was on a Sunday. It was on a Sunday. I'll never forget this because I took Amtrak up from Philly, and in Boston, everything was closed.
Of
Forget
course. Yeah.
about trying to go pick up food or whatever. Like that wasn't happening. That wasn't an option. I was like, what the hell am I going to eat? Like there's nothing open except a 7-Eleven. I mean, I don't even remember if Dunks was even open. Dunks was
Mhm.
probably closed.
Wow.
But but now I go up there, I do the interview, I get offered the job right on the spot. And I remember just feeling like, wow,
It
okay.
worked. Yeah.
It worked and it's happening. Now it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So I got asked the golden question, when do you want to start? I said, okay. Um, I could have started in January, but for some reason, something told me, should go for February. So I went for February. I said, February, we're gonna do it because I'll give me another month to like work, build up that money, and so forth. So I did exactly that. February 14th, it's my last day working in New York. By this point, the old job that I was working at in New York, the school building, they knew that I was leaving and that I was going to be moving to Boston. My student, I was a one-to-one paraprofessional once upon a time working with special education students, especially with children with learning disabilities. And my student came up to me and was like, "Please don't leave, Mr. Wright," and that broke my heart.
I bet.
That
Yeah.
that really sincerely broke my heart. It was like I'm moving because I have a dream, but it's like, what do I do? Like I can't tell a kid like no goodbye, get out of my face. Like no, like because I built a relationship with this young child. So after that, I got home. My bags were already packed. My mom was on the phone with my uncle, and I got pretty emotional because it was like this process that started in August 2015, and here we are, February 14th, 2017. It's happening. It's
Yes.
here. And that goal became reality. And my mom expressed to me how proud of me she was and still is. And it really like gave me the push, that final push that I needed. And I said, listen, I'll be back to visit. Don't worry about that. Please don't, seriously. And I left the house maybe about an hour or two after I got back in from New York, and that's how I ended up here in Boston on February 15th, 2017, and it's only 8 days removed from the
Yeah.
from the anniversary of moving here.
Well, I'm so glad you did it. And what's great about it's hard. I mean, I've moved a lot. It stinks.
Yeah.
You have to think like you have one shot at this in life, and that
Hmm.
you're very passionate. And if you probably would regret if you didn't pursue this.
Oh, for sure. Because
Yeah.
you know what's funny, and I want to share this because I want this. I really want this to permeate with whoever is listening and whoever's going to be watching. One of the things that I really made it a point of is that I want my story to truly be a source of inspiration.
Yes.
That more than anything else, that like this is the man that has a dream, and he's working hard on his dream, and while he is where he is now, he doesn't take it for granted, nor is he satisfied, but he's still working his tail off, every single day, one way or another. So in April of 2012, I was still an undergrad student at Long Island University. I was a journalism major in college. My father at that time was recovering from a near fatal stroke. True story, which he sustained 9 years ago this month.
Wow.
And I'll never forget something that he told me. He said, Shukri, you may have to leave New York if you want to start your radio career. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Don't limit yourself to just New York. New
Yeah.
York is always going to be here,
Yep.
but don't limit there because remember, you started with no experience. You may have to go elsewhere. And I'll never forget that because I never would have thought at that time in a million years that Boston would be my first home away from home. Never would have imagined.
No.
Like it's just crazy to go to show like how life works sometimes.
Yeah. And I noticed that you worked at the garden, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
That is, when I was a kid at the old, I mean, I love the old garden.
Yeah.
I always loved when they did that. So you changed like you worked on that crew, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was part of the Bull gang, in which that I worked, changing like the arena from hockey to
Yeah,
basketball. Putting down the subfloor on top of the ice, and putting down the parquet. I remember the first time I did it, I was in utter awe,
I can
where
imagine.
it was like, wait a minute, this is the parquet. Like, yeah, this is the actual parquet that the
Yep.
Celtics have been playing on since the old days of the old Boston Garden, and it was just amazing. I mean, like it wasn't the exact same one from the old Boston Garden, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But it was just like amazing. And when I would share photos and videos on Facebook and social media, my friends would be amazing. Like, dude, like how cool is that? I'm I was like,
Yep.
it gives me a different level of appreciation where people don't know and understand what goes on when the doors close, when the fans leave the arena, when we're doing changeovers and how it all works and so forth.
Yeah, I'm sure other cities have similar things, but
Yeah.
in my experiences, Boston has things that like the wall, like that, what that
Hmm.
means to people. I don't know if there's a lot of other. I mean, I'd have to obviously think. There's so many new ballparks now, but
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah,
it's the little sub character in a movie.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
parquet floor, like that when we were growing up, that was huge for people. Not not just the Celtics, but the floor they played on. Like you would
Yes.
go to a game and be like, "Wow, that's the." And they were passionate about the maybe the quirkiest things, but that's what I think makes it so
Absolutely.
special. It's the whole. I tell people this with the Red Sox influenced me to get in what I got into, and it wasn't
Sure.
just the
Yeah.
game; it was the whole experience. It was going to Yawkey Way. It was the panhandlers. It was the people selling the peanuts. It was the smells, the sights. It's the whole friggin'
Oh
thing,
yeah.
And
Hmm.
I'm the old Yankee Stadium definitely had the same
Oh
vibe,
man.
you
Who?
know.
Oh, without question. You know something, Mike. Growing up in New York, and I tell people this all the time. If you didn't grow up in New York or the New York metropolitan area, I really feel like you missed out on what truly was a gem of a lifetime.
Oh
That was
yeah,
old Yankee Stadium.
yeah,
And like for me, I still vividly remember the childhood memories of watching the Yankees go on deep championship runs in October at Old Yankee Stadium, and just seeing fans of 55 to 58,000 people at Old Yankee Stadium just go absolutely berserk. And my indelible memory of Old Yankee Stadium is always going to be this. Is always going to be Game 5, 2001 World Series. And I still tell people this, it's wholeheartedly the best World Series I've ever seen in my life, hands down, even though the Yankees lost. Without question, the best World Series I've seen in my lifetime. The second best, I would say, the 2016 World Series, but 2001.
Yeah.
Because as for all of us that are old enough to remember, and it blows my mind that we're gonna have 21-year-olds that's gonna be walking around right now that have absolutely no memory of 9/11
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Zero. And it's like, no, 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 no. You don't understand. 9/11 at that time in this country, and you understand it just as much as I do, but especially me being in New York that day in school when the attacks were unfolding. I remember just how much New York was reeling, how much this country was reeling. I remember, especially in New York in particular, Shea Stadium became an important site to help with the recovery efforts at the World Trade Center site, and as well as Old Yankee Stadium. Now, this is something that stands out in my memory. I remember watching this at home and the old UPN 9, which is now now has changed networks. I remember George Steinbrenner, the late George Steinbrenner. He turned Old Yankee Stadium into a multi-faith congregational site
Yeah.
where they did a special service. I think this was like about a week and a half, 2 weeks after 9/11. I remember this was a time that we as people needed to come together, that we
Yep.
needed to come together as human beings and realize that what happened was truly horrific. It's something that even later this year we're going to celebrate 20 years down on 20 years of after 9/11 of the 9/11 anniversary. But it was something that even now, when I think about it, I get chills. And I go back to that night of Game 5 of 2001 World Series. This was less than 2 months after 9/11. Yankees are down 2-0, and Brocious hits the home run that ties it in the bottom of the ninth.
Yep.
And I'll never forget watching that game on Fox, like just seeing Yankee Stadium just go into a complete scene that I'm gonna try my best to explain this and paint the picture. Like it's like almost like watching a wave,
Yeah.
like a wave that you just cannot explain. Like because the night before, Tino Martinez had done it in the bottom of the ninth against the same pitcher,
Kim, right?
young Kim.
Yeah.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. But the following night, it was like, there's no way this can happen again on back-to-back nights. There's no way. And it happened. So that for me is always going to be the most indelible memory. And you mentioned about Fenway Park. I was talking about this on the Know Your Right show, which I did earlier today, in which that there's something about Fenway I genuinely miss. The last game at Fenway that I went to was September 6th of 19. It was Yankees Red Sox. It was a Friday night game. Went there. And like as always, it never failed. Crowd was electric.
Yeah.
Just absolutely into the game. Although the Red Sox, they were falling out of contention for a postseason spot at that time, but just the energy and the smell of the hot dogs and the smell of beer in the ballpark, like the smell of peanuts, like I miss that genuinely so much. And I'm not even a Red Sox fan, but I miss that.
Yeah.
And then like lastly, the quirkiness, the Green Monster. Can you imagine Fenway Park without the Green Monster?
No.
It's just impossible. It's like, no, that's synonymous with the Red Sox. It's been synonymous with the Red Sox for God knows how long. You know what I'm saying?
I'm pretty sure I was at the game the next day.
It was a Saturday afternoon game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was. Yep, I remember that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I was at that game because that's when JD Martinez like intentionally hit a girl in the chest.
Yeah, I remember. Oh God.
But I didn't know that happened till later. And I was sitting down that right field. It was a terrible, game. The Sox were, yeah.
But that was also the same game, if my memory serves me correctly. Giancarlo Stanton hits a bomb into the monster seats.
Yes.
This fan has an arm of, I don't know, some sort of some Greek mythological figure or whatever, throws it back into the infield on the fly, hitting John Carlos Stanton, and I'm like, did he just do what I think he just did?
Yeah.
And it was just like, no,
Yep. It's
he
crazy.
did. It was just like, this is crazy. I just missed that.
Yeah. No, I know. It's special. So let me ask you, speaking of
Mhm.
that, who would you say your best interview's been? I know you get to interview Cedric Maxwell, which was cool.
Oh, that was amazing. Wow. Um,
Maybe Bob?
my best Bob was up there,
Yep.
but you're asking me to pick between, oh man, because I've been fortunate. I've been very blessed
You
to have
have.
interviewed some really outstanding guests. I interviewed Brian Anderson at one point, the play-by-play voice of the Milwaukee Brewers and
Yeah.
the NBA and TNT, the MLB on TBS as well. Bob McElligott as well. I interviewed. I also interviewed Cedric Maxwell as well. I interviewed Hall of Famer Grant Fuhr. But honestly, I'm actually going to go with not someone who's in the industry,
Hmm.
but I'm actually going to go with Grant Fuhr for this reason, because there's a couple of things, and I sent out a tweet about this. I don't remember how long ago, but it was earlier this month. This is Black History Month, and in the NHL, I think the NHL has done a really great job with this in like honoring the contribution that Black athletes have made to hockey. We all know about Willie O'Ree, the first Black hockey player
Yeah.
to ever play in the NHL. He played for the Boston Bruins, and his number 22 is going to be retired next year when we can have full arenas again and so forth. But interviewing the first Black hockey player to be inducted into the Hall of Fame was something special,
I can
because
imagine.
I'll never forget. Just I just wanted to know so much about his story from growing up in Canada to playing hockey, and his time with the great Edmonton Oiler dynasty that was in the 80s and as well as 1990. You talk about, he played with the likes of Mark Messier, Paul Coffey, obviously the Wayne Gretzky. We
Yeah.
talk about like just the legends that they had, and like Glenn Anderson as well. And but just hearing about his stories of being the goaltender that was the glue of it all. You're talking about what was deemed as at that time the most dominant goaltender in the NHL at that time in the mid 80s. He was that
Oh
guy,
yeah.
and it was just amazing just to talk to him and hear about his story, and about when he got inducted, and it was just amazing just to have the opportunity to talk to him. I think that I have to go with, in terms of former athlete, I gotta go with Grant Fuhr, no question.
Awesome. It's funny because my last question was going to be, since we're recording this in February, what does Black History Month mean to you? And I will say that over time, I love how much it's grown, how much we've honored people in every walk of life, Shukri, because I think it's important to do that.
For sure. And it's a great question, because what it means to me is that Black History Month is not just relegated to February. It's all year round. I
Yes.
mean, it could be June, and we could be talking about like Jackie Robinson. We talk about Jackie Robinson like every April 15th around Major League Baseball, him being the first African American to play in the major leagues. And Black history is American history.
Yes.
There's no getting around it. And I think Major League Baseball finally came to its senses, and for them to finally incorporate the records from the Negro Leagues as officially part of the Major League Baseball record book, I thought that was powerful, because number one, unfortunately, we lived in a time in which that racism was the norm.
Sure.
African Americans were not allowed to play Major League Baseball. So you have legends like Babe Ruth or Joe DiMaggio or Jimmy Fox or like just like Spud Chandler, or like you have these guys going up against their fellow counterparts, but they didn't really compete against the best of the best, like a John Gibson or Cool Papa Bell or Satchel
Satchel
Paige,
Paige. Yeah.
or Oscar Robertson, another guy
Yeah.
that I think as baseball fans we all should know.
Sure.
I think it's tremendous because it gives people the opportunity to learn about the Negro Leagues, and that you want to talk about competition. there it was, the best of the best that never got the chance to play. And sadly, we just lost Henry Aaron
Hmm.
just less than a month ago. He just passed away. His career started in the Negro Leagues, if you will. And you think about guys like Willie Mays, Henry Aaron, like those men are not where they are without the contributions of Jackie Robinson, without question. And that's why I strongly
True.
feel that. And that's just only in sports we're talking about. I didn't even talk about Chuck Cooper, first black player to play in the NBA. I talked about Willie O'Ree a little earlier. Like I just strongly feel that Black history isn't just only relegated. It should not be only be relegated to February, but rather it's year round, because the contributions were just not only in February, but throughout the entire year, in which that it's left an indelible mark in our lives.
Yeah, and speaking of Aaron and Mays, they are two guys that I think have stood the test of time. When it's easy to say now this is the greatest player of all time every like 20 years,
For
but now
sure.
when you look back at what Henry Aaron and Mays did, I mean, Aaron never hit 50 home runs and still hit
Which
700. It's
blew my
crazy.
mind. Yeah.
Like I don't
Like
think people realize how good.
yeah.
I mean,
It blew my mind, because like the day that he passed, and they were talking about this on MLB Network, and I was like, wait, he never hit 50 homers in the
isn't it
season? They were like,
crazy?
no.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like you talk about the longevity of the consistency. And the part that really spoke volumes about his greatness is this: Henry Aaron had over 3,700 hits in his career. If I believe correctly, I think 3,771 to be exact. You take out his 755 home runs, you still have over 3,000 hits,
Yeah.
which spoke volumes about why he was a firm believer in hitting the ball the opposite way, going the other way, not just only being a pull hitter. And he talked about like who his favorite hitter was, like to watch hit, because he wasn't a guy that just was a pure pull hitter. He's a guy that can go all fields and hit for power.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.